My father was from Florence, South Carolina. I don't know if you know any Williamses in Florence, South Carolina. Those of you who live in South Carolina, there's still a big family down there. My grandmother and grandfather came from Darlington, South Carolina, and they went to Florence, where my father was born. They had 12 children, and my father was the baby. As far back as my father can remember, his mother was blind. She could not see. She had cataracts, really, really thick. I was blessed to know my grandmother because my father would often take us to see our grandparents. And at one time, my grandparents came to live with us. I think I may have been about 13 years old when my grandparents came and lived with us for a good while. Now, my grandfather was a brick mason, and he and my grandmother were very elderly when they came to live with us. But my grandfather would always go out of the house, and he would go to construction sites where they were building brick houses and buildings, and they would hire him to clean off the bricks, to just take, I guess, some kind of instrument and clean the, I guess you would call it cement or the mortar off of the bricks. So he was gone most of the day. At the time they lived with us, I was blessed to have a room of my own right next to my grandparents' room. As a matter of fact, I think that was the only time I ever had a room of my own in that particular house. And I certainly did enjoy it, I tell you that. But my grandmother did not go up and down the stairs. She pretty much stayed in her room. Now, I say all of this to you because physically challenged people now have so much more of an opportunity to get around. And now that I look back on those days with my grandmother there, I kind of wished that my parents had known about schools for the blind or places where she could have had classes to be able to go up and down the stairs, because she was confined in her bedroom. Now, I was kind of interested in her because she was blind, and I would go in there and sit down and talk with her. And because she spent so much time by herself since my grandfather was gone. And my sisters and brothers weren't afraid of her, but they weren't used to talking to old people. And you know, I think that's the way it is now. Our young people don't come in contact with enough elderly people, so when they're around them, they don't know what to say. They're at a loss for words. And of course, I didn't know what to say, but I would go in there and, "Hi, Grandmama, how you doing?" "Oh, I'm fine." Oh, she was such a pleasant woman. Oh, she just had a pleasant voice, and I just loved talking with her. She had long, thick hair, and she'd say, "You want to comb my hair?" And I said, "Yeah, I'll comb it." You know, children love to comb hair. Girls love to comb hair. And hers was long and thick. Now, she never asked me to wash it. And I don't know how she washed it. I guess my grandfather must have washed her hair from time to time. But I would just do her plaits. She wore pretty much 3 plaits, and I would part it, and oh my goodness, I didn't plait it the same old way that it was. I would plait different plaits. I just had my way with her hair. I remember those times with my grandmother. She could not see, but she could feel. And she would know money. But I often wondered, she never saw my father's face and the faces of some of her other children, because with those cataracts, back then, I guess there was no doctor, no ophthalmologist in the African American community that could have done something. But I know that had she lived now, she probably could have gotten that cataract surgery and would have made a totally different time in her life. Oh my goodness. Just to think about grandparents. Do you remember your grandparents? Did your grandparent have a physical challenge? I remember too, one time, my grandmother fell down the steps from the 2nd floor down to the 1st floor, and she cut her head, her eye, and it just bled. And my father was there, my mother. Oh my goodness, they told me, take this money and go to People's Drugstore. And they told me to get some bandages and some salve. So they told me the name of the salve, but I didn't know. I ran 3 blocks non-stop because that adrenaline was flowing through me. I wouldn't have been able to do it otherwise because I didn't do a lot of running. But for some reason, I couldn't stop running. I couldn't stop. I knew it was my grandmother, and I wanted her to be taken care of. And I got what I needed to do, and I ran back those 3 blocks. And those were long city blocks. And I just ran. I didn't care what anybody said. I ran to make certain that my grandmother was all right. So my father bandaged up her eye, and they washed it and everything, her head. And she went back upstairs. I think when she came out of her room, she must have missed a step or misjudged and just went down the stairs instead of that. Comment to me if you remember your grandmother and your grandfather. Did you ever live with them? Let me know what you think.